Hello and welcome to Team 8's presentation on the prisoner's dilemma, as it was formalized by Albert Tucker. My name is Brian Bell and I will be narrating this presentation on behalf of my teammates Ciara, Connie, Janet, Farid, and Kirk. The prisoner's dilemma is one of the most famous incarnations of game theory. Game theory is an application of logic and mathematics to zero-sum games. A zero-sum game is a situation presented to two or more individuals in which each has no knowledge of the other's intentions or actions until after the decision has been made. This type of scenario is used to analyze human tendencies as well as attempt to find an algorithm to make the best out of situations which are less than desirable. The prisoner's dilemma is a scenario in which two suspects are arrested by the police. The police have insufficient evidence for a conviction and, having separated both prisoners, visit each of them to offer them the same deal. If one testifies or defects from the other for the prosecution against the other, the second remains silent, cooperates with the other. The betrayer goes free and the silent accomplice receives a full 10-year sentence. If both remain silent, both prisoners are sentenced to only 6 months in jail for a minor charge. If each betrays the other, each will receive a minor 5-year sentence. Each prisoner must choose to betray the other or to remain silent. Each one is assured that the other would not know about the betrayal before the end of the investigation. The question becomes, how should they act and why? This is an outcome matrix given that prisoner A or B remains silent or betrays. This is a generalized outcome matrix given the scenario of cooperate or defect, which can be applied to more normalized situations. There are many factors which go into the decision-making process in this scenario. What knowledge you have of the other person, the levels of risk you are willing to assume in order to minimize your punishment, and your personal belief system also plays a role. With these factors in mind, and the possible outcomes to the scenario, a decision must be made. With this said, we will discuss various strategies to solving this scenario later in the presentation. The prisoner's dilemma fails to make some important distinctions between theory and real-world situations. The real world has many more factors making the decision matrix less defined and with more shades of gray. These added variables make more possible outcomes available. The game theory also leaves out the unending nature of real-life scenarios, which allows for the participants to learn and react based on their prior experiences. There are 3 strategies which are considered to be the best leading to the best outcome. The ideal situation is obviously that both sides act on mutual trust and always cooperate, thus minimizing the jail time for both involved. Under the assumption that each participant can learn from prior scenarios, there are 2 related theories which take effect. First is Robert Axelrod's theory of cooperation with retaliation, also referred to as a tit-for-tat response. This requires that players start trusting each other and only defect in retaliation of the other player's response, thus giving both players an optimal outcome but allowing them to pay the other back for defection. Lastly, the Pavlov strategy is to follow Axelrod's but defect at different times in order to minimize personal negative impacts. Ideally, the Pavlov move would be best made in the last move of the game to not allow for a retaliatory response from the other player. The prisoner's dilemma can be applied to many situations, from law enforcement to economic issues. Due to the nature of this class, we choose to use a scenario from the economic realm. In this scenario, we will address the competitors of Southwest and Continental in the airline industry. The best possible scenario is obviously collusion. If both companies stick to the plan, they will both maximize their overall income without any variation. However, in most situations, one company will defect. This defection will immediately pay off high for the company that chose not to cooperate, also leaving the uncooperative company in a less ideal situation. It is also possible that both companies will defect at the same time, thus lowering both companies' profits substantially, but it will not defect either as drastically as a single defection. These situations are parallel to those in a prisoner's dilemma. The last possibility, however, is not an option in a prisoner's dilemma, given the rigid constraints of the original scenario. This possibility takes the form of a price war. Once the first company breaks the agreement, the other company retaliates, causing a cycle of price cuts, causing both companies to lose in excess of the mutual defection scenario. The conclusion is that the prisoner's dilemma can be applied to many situations in a lot of different disciplines. The ideal game theory can be used to understand many real-world scenarios, as well as to try and maximize profits in today's economy. While the outcome of a zero-sum game is not guaranteed, there are many ways to maximize the positive and minimize the negative outcomes, as was discussed with the ideal scenario, Axelrod's scenario, and the Pavlov scenario. With this said, here's a brief look at our citations, and thank you for your time from Group 8.